thank everybody for coming officially, and that's really nice that you did. I'm happy to have Professor Lucas Saul to talk to us about Bitcoin. And Luke's been following lots of fields of endeavor for his life, so I feel lucky to be around to have this kind of synthesis of all these various fields. Can't even say what they are. There's been lots of them. Physics and music and humor and sports of many kind, mountain climbing and rock climbing and skiing. Keep going. What are the other and fathering. Over the last 10 years, Luke's shown a big interest in Bitcoin, and which was for the family was surprising because nobody knew anything at all. And Luke's personality, I think, is more quiet and laid back in a way. Maybe not such a compulsive talker. So, but when he picked up on Bitcoin, that changed a little bit. So I thought, well, that said something I should pay attention to. So I thought, so I have begun to pay a little bit more. Hey, heck, you've been paying a little bit more attention to it. So I hope that you can be sympathetic with my attitude and pay attention to what Luke has to say about Bitcoin. I thank you for wanting to do this, and it's really nice you came to talk. And so, without further ado, Luke Saul, thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Dad. Yeah, great to. Thanks for coming. I'm going to start out with just see where everybody is with this. Does anybody have any Bitcoin in their pocket right now?
Probably a little bit.
Okay, a couple people. How about paper money? Anybody have some U.S. dollars in their pocket right now? Most people, not everybody, but most people. Does anybody know what famous speaker often started his talks with that exact question? Maybe Andreas Antonopoulos. Nice, very good. Famous Bitcoin educator. He's been giving talks, traveling the world, and. When I asked that question in China at some talks, a little different answer because not many people have paper currency because everybody's using their phones and WeChat Pay and Alipay. So mostly the foreigners have some cash in their pocket, but also not so many people had Bitcoin in their pocket. So that part is similar. So. I have some other questions here. Let's see. Who was the father of information information age? Some guesses here. Also gave us the popular name for a unit of information. The bit. Very good. Yes. And who popularized that? Initials are the same as computer science, CS. You at home? Anyone at home? No? Carl Sagan, good guess. I hadn't thought of that. But it's Claude Shannon was guy who wrote the mathematical theory of communication. And this number here, how many bits does it take to represent this number? Anybody come up with that number? Close.
4.
Some.
It's 16 or 8.
Well, it's 4 binary. It's 4 decimal digits. That would be one way to say it. But for the number of bits, it would take 10 bits. It's about 2 to the 10th. And moving on here, this is a line of code from the original Bitcoin project, still in most of the wallet software you have. This happens to be C++. This defines an integer called coin, and it gives some integer here, some number. I'm wondering if anybody might be able to come up with that one. Coin. What is coin in the Bitcoin language? What number? My hint here is not going to help with this audience, I'm afraid. I wrote the answer on this, but this is 100 million, the answer. The also called just how much a coin breaks up into, how many small pieces is one coin, is 100 million pennies, or satoshis as they call them, the smallest unit. But these are the kind of things that I believe will need to be introduced in elementary education, and it's like many of you know some esoteric knowledge about like how many nickels are in a quarter and things like that. And, so how many satoshis are there in a milli? A milli being 1,000th of a Bitcoin. Any guesses? Close. Well, remember there's 100 million in one full coin.
You can't do that now.
Yeah. So you'd have to have been exposed to this. Sometimes if people do trading, I came up with 1 milli. It's about, the answer is about 100,000 exactly satoshis in 1,000th. A milli is a common unit, MBTC. You might see written on prices. 1,000th of a Bitcoin. And the Satoshi is the smallest unit, the 100 millionth. It's actually one thing, interesting thing about Chinese and Asian languages that they have, instead of these importance of groups of 3 zeros, we have 1,000, million, billion in English. There's 4 zeros. They have the yuan is 10,000, and then 8 zeros, which is E. So the fact that this number was chosen for Bitcoin might be some evidence that there was some Satoshi Nakamoto might have some Asian influence in him somewhere. There's not that much evidence about who the guy was, but there's grasping at straws here. So basically, my goal here for the next half hour, 45 minutes, will be to show you some things that I've learned from learning about Bitcoin. So one of the great things about it has been being exposed to economics and culture and mathematics and stuff that I thought maybe I knew about what money was, and I thought maybe I knew about how markets worked, but I didn't really. So I've learned a lot through this interest in how these digital currencies are progressing, and so you can maybe you'll get some of that. Let's see. All right, so maybe I'll hold off on the Chinese lesson too much, though. But we have here a symbol for gold. This is gold. You can see the left-hand side of the word for money is actually this radical that means gold. Because gold is part of money, a lot of people's conception still. This is the renminbi, the yuan, the currency and mostly used in China. This means cash. This is the American dollar. This is the Bitcoin, B2B. This is a tether. And my question here for these things is I'm going to ask you which one is a public and which one is a private currency. And maybe, so how many people think that gold is private currency, privately issued? Anybody? Public? Is it publicly issued? Yeah.
It used to be, but I don't think it is
Yeah.
anymore.
It's kind of hard.
It used to be backed, right? Currencies are backed, but
That's another history we could get into. Yeah, used to be is I guess the right answer. But I think of it as if you dig some gold up out of the ground, you don't have to tell anybody. It's a privately issued currency. If you even though you can't really produce more, like you can't say, I need a million ounces, click a button and there they are. It's just kind of one of the nice things about a gold system compared to other systems, yeah. But I would still call it privately issued. And the renminbi What do you think? Privately issued, publicly issued? Chinese currency.
Fiat, right?
Yeah.
Public. So public.
Well, I would call it private because it's issued in behind closed doors. If someone makes a new batch, it's not it doesn't have to be announced. It's not
Oh, I see. You have a different definition.
Yeah.
maybe I'm using I'm talking about the issuance and the transactions. So the creation events and if I send some to you, this can be private. But in the case of what about these? Has anybody heard of the Ray Stones of the Yap Islands?
I think so.
Yeah, you guys, these guys,
They're all into villages or something.
these guys have been on the tour of the Bitcoin talks. They, but it's a pretty cool example of if you want of a public currency because they have these big rocks that are sometimes 8 feet high and have a hole in the middle. They're sort of ceremonial. And the thing is that they sit in the town center. And if you use it, if it's yours, everybody knows like that's yours, you're a wealthy guy. And if you want to buy it, you say, would you like my stone, in exchange for your flock of geese or your daughter or, whatever it was. And and if you make the deal, then the stone stays there, but now the town knows that it belongs to you now because it's been a public transaction. And so it's and the nice thing about that is that you don't you can see the money supply. Like no one's gonna pawn off a fake stone on you because like they're all there. And so this is a common example with Bitcoin. Is Bitcoin functions basically that in that way. It's public in that the coins are out there for everybody to see.
It's transparent.
It's transparent, yeah. So you can't make up some new ones and add them because they're all here's the list. There's no you'd see immediately that they were not on the list. This is also true of this USD tether US dollar, which I don't know. Has anybody heard of this currency? One of the fun things about these guys again, yeah, about this whole field is that there's been a lot of new innovation in a field that has been previously stifled. So there's a guy not too long ago who made silver and gold coins, and he called them like Liberty dollars. I forget exactly what they were. You know what I'm talking
I
about?
think that's exactly what they were.
Okay.
$30.
And he was put in jail for his efforts. And this is sort of seen as some sort of competition with the mint, the U.S. Treasury, and there's been a number of similar situations where this kind of innovation was not encouraged. But today there's these guys just like crazy. It's True USD and Tether USD, and then all these people are buy our digital currency. It's like the floodgates have been opened, mostly because Bitcoin was the construction is sort of unstoppable. All these open source projects are decentralized in a way that you can't. There's no one to put in jail. You could put a bunch of people in jail, but it wouldn't change anything. You'd still have Bitcoin out there. So it's kind of open up the doors for people to do this stuff. Price. Okay, how many people think that the price of Bitcoin is less than it was 1 year ago? Everybody think it's more than it was 1 year ago? I don't see hands on either one, but I think the smiles.
It's about the same.
About the same.
And it goes up, and then you can read about it. It's
Compared to
special
1 year
issues
ago?
that-
1 year
It's
ago.
about 3 times what it was.
Yeah, I think that's right. 2 or 3. Can we get the next slide, please? So you can't really see this. I'm sorry. This is 2010. This is $10,000. This is 1,000.
Have any Tether?
Oh, sorry about that. Thanks. That's better. So yeah, we see 1 year ago was about here about 3,000 something. It's not real clear, but you can get a sense for the. These are orders of magnitude. So this is,
A lot of it.
yeah, this is 10,000. So this was up to 20, almost 20,000 at that peak. We're kind of here now, but it's still above where it was last year. There's this long. This was in November 2013. This peak, $1,000.
Knockouts.
Yeah, it got collapsed here, and then there's 3 years before we reach that again. This is sort of a long time period compared to some of these other periods of bear markets, if you will. Let's take the next slide. You can't read this. Let's try the next slide. All right, this might be more fun for you guys because we're just going to go over some prehistory, understanding how where we are in the situation comes from knowing about the advances of communication, symbolic communication and computation. 1946, we have Alan Turing designing a programmable computer. 48, Claude Shannon's mathematical theory of communication, the bit in the Bitcoin. And 1965, Gordon Moore wrote this paper saying that the amount of transistors on a chip would double every 2 years, I believe.
18 months.
18 months. He's the founder of Intel and another company as well. I always forget but another semiconductor business. The big advance that is important is about 1974. Vivesh Shamir and Adelman is RSA. You might have heard of these guys. Coming up with a system of a public and a private key to encrypt information, and this enabled a lot of interesting things. Being able to make a digital signature. So if you have a key, you can you can keep your information private and use it to demonstrate that you have that information without revealing the information. I'm not going to be able to do this justice real quick. If you haven't come across this, this is one of two basic technologies that is absolutely necessary to allow these coins to exist. This is how your coins are secured. You keep a key, and yet there's a public portion. So you have something that you can show to people. So you go into the restaurant, they have a little QR code showing their public key to all their customers. So you can see that, you can scan it, send them some money, and yet you can't take their money. That's important. So that's the public and private key pair system, asymmetric key encryption it's called. People got really excited after this too. They were like, oh man, this is going to change the world, and we're going to get digital currency, and this is going to change everything. And it kind of didn't really happen, unfortunately. It took a long time. Timothy May wrote his Crypto Anarchy Manifesto. 1983, Richard Stallman, founder of the free software movement. Another hero, building our infrastructure. 91,
Yep.
Linux. Yeah. And also changed everything. It's the most popular operating system today. And 94, this book about applied cryptography came out, and this is sort of a official milestone of sorts, because there's been a lot of people used to. The whole science of cryptography was sort of a lot of cloak and dagger kind of states were working on getting the better stuff and keeping this stuff secret. And it certainly made a big difference in World War II, and people being able to intercept communications. And so there was a lot of we don't want to share this information kind of idea out there. And a lot of the browsers, in fact, if you had Netscape browser in the early 90s, It actually came with a little thing. You're not allowed to share this with anybody in a foreign country. And it was a little silly because, of course, there was on on your AOL disk or whatever. So I don't think this is really a state secret, but so at this point it was like, okay, like this is out there. We're not keeping this stuff secret anymore. In some sense, some of this was always out there. I mean, even back here in 1948, they knew how to make perfect crypto systems. A one-time pad, and you can prove that this is unbreakable. As long as you can share a key beforehand, you have perfect. There's no way an enemy could intercept and read it.
You mean the private key?
Yeah, if you share a private key beforehand and the key length is the same length as the message and you never reuse it, and the key is random, and there's no way any cryptanalysis could do anything, because every letter is encrypted with another random number, so it's hopeless to try and crack that. And so yeah, mostly today people use open crypto systems, which means that you're not trying to hide the system. System's open, you hide the key. So you make that way you have a robust system that's not going to have like bugs in it, and also you know where the strengths are. And you can use long keys. There's no holding back with that system. Dispersed target?
Perhaps.
Okay, yeah, well, there's always, ways around these things.
No, I mean, you'd have to hack every wallet to try to hack, as opposed to hacking one bank and getting your money.
Okay, yeah. Excuse me. A couple other things that led up to Bitcoin, this hash cache idea from Adam Back, 97. He thought he would use this as a way to prevent spam, to get people to use computing power and to demonstrate that they were not spammers. And it kind of didn't really work, but this was very close to the way that Satoshi designed Bitcoin, to getting people to build on hash power from the. And this guy Wei Dai wrote this paper called B Money, which was kind of outlined how Bitcoin works really, except without the hash part. It's just like having a public ledger. And then there's some nice science fiction books, in case you haven't read them. All right, next slide. One more. This is number of transistors. Oh, okay. This is Milton Friedman. Is there a volume on there? Let me try. Excuse me.
Is a reliable e-cache, a method whereby on the internet.
Try again the forward slide.
Oh,
So that I think that the internet is going to be one of the major forces for reducing the role of government. The one thing that's missing, but that will soon be developed, is a reliable e-cache, a method whereby on the internet you can transfer funds from A to B without A knowing B or B knowing A. The way in which I can take a $20 bill and hand it over to you, and there's no record of where it came from. And you may get that without knowing who I am. That kind of thing will develop on the internet, and that will make it even easier for people to use the internet. Of course, it has its negative side. It means that the gangsters, the people who are engaged in illegal transactions will also have an easier way to carry on their business.
All right, that was 1999. Here's the next slide. I'm going to try to go pretty quick here because there's I have a bunch of slides that have from some different talks. So if anybody asks me a question anytime, that's great, because I want to focus on what you're there. This is some basic monetary theory. Has anybody? You guys have seen these kind of terms. Anybody seen this before? Aristotle came with four important qualities of money. Durable, it shouldn't fall apart in your pocket, or even over some years. Portable, well, you should be able to carry it easily, right? It's cow is not a good money system because it's just too hard to carry to the store. Divisible, also trouble with the cow, right? Half a cow. And Aristotle said that it should have a use, like an inherent value or use, be able to have some use, which is something that we don't see much in today's money, but 3 for 4 is pretty good. And maybe he was right. Maybe we should have stuck to usable things. Bitcoin certainly doesn't really have a use case, apart from trading for things. Dollar doesn't either have a use other than trading for things. But gold, that people often argue about gold as in jewelry and used in electronics, does have some potential use, but it seems that if you're trying to build an exchange commodity, maybe it doesn't have to have a use. Maybe it's better that it doesn't.
Well, we assign gold, a value.
Mm-hmm.
It's purely that because the computers and the connections it's used for is recent.
That's true. Yeah.
But gold had value before that.
Yeah.
Value that was assigned to it.
Yeah.
I don't think it has any real intrinsic value.
Might be because the Anunnaki come to the Earth to take it all. It's an interesting question of whether it was started to have the use value. People liked it for the jewelry, and then it became money, or I'm not sure exactly. But anyway, none of these digital currencies have some of them maybe utility tokens supposed to have a use. Well, maybe we'll get there. Some other important qualities: scarcity. You want this stuff to be scarce enough to. The whole point of a monetary system is to deal with scarcity. If you have, if we were all rich, if we didn't have scarcity, everything was, like for example, ocean water isn't scarce. And you notice that you don't find it being traded for money very often because if you need some, you take it. And so it's only when you have scarcity that you have a need for this monetary system to help distribute goods and services. So that's interesting to realize that we only need money when there's poverty, when there's scarcity. So these are durable, portable, divisible, verifiable. You might call this assayable. You want to be able to tell if it's real. And this is another problem with gold. It's not that easy, really. It can be done, but if you're just in the shop, you don't want to be like, let's bring this to the back room and we'll weigh it and check out there's some tungsten in there. But this is something that with these digital coins, it's just like, it's right away because here's my list of all of them and here's your coin. Quickly verified that it's real. Something like fiat currency is odd that there's not really a way to verify a dollar. The only way to verify is to make sure the bank will take it.
Yep.
There's not like a way to prove that's a real dollar. The only way is to pawn it off on someone.
It's a belief system.
Yeah. Storable is sort of similar to durable, I guess. Fungible means each one is the same as any other. So you want it to be. I want your dollar, but not yours. Like that's not really a quality you want in an exchange commodity. And actually, oddly enough, Bitcoin's not really great on the fungible scale. There is a history, unlike what Milton Friedman was saying 10 years before Bitcoin. There's a history to Bitcoins. You can tell that they're different. That your coin was mined at this time and changed hands here and there. So even though they're still worth the same and they're effectively fungible, I'm just not going to care. But in fact, there is a difference.
So, Bitcoins, you say mined. Was there a set number of Bitcoins? Because a friend of mine said that he had this huge network and he was generating Bitcoin. So,
That's a great question. I do have some slides I can address how the money supply has grown and how that happens. Another way to describe money is four components rather than all this stuff. This stuff talks about the currency itself, but by itself, like this might all apply to like strontium, but yet it's not. Who cares? No one's accepting that as money. You might not have a way to hold strontium. You need these things in place, a network of people using it, widely used this year, I guess, yeah. Ledger, wallet, and a mint. There's sort of four components that I see in the official nodes of different coins these days. Four component system. Can you give me another slide? We'll just try to address this money supply issue. Okay, maybe I'll give this slide a couple moments because I picked a funny title for you. Does anybody here read Reddit? Does anybody use a Reddit website? Well, a couple more from these guys again. And one over here. There's a place on Reddit called the Bitcoin group, and it's a place I like to go because there's a lot of people who really don't like Bitcoin, and sometimes they put up some valid concerns, and they call them butts. Bitcoin is a butt in this discussion group. So I thought I'd give these guys a nod with this. And sometimes their commentary is just as crazy as the guys who are really promoting all the cryptocurrencies. But there's four great ways to describe what is a Bitcoin. Of course, the first one is the one that appears in the paper from Satoshi that opens a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That describes what it is. Another way to describe it is a triple entry accounting system. And triple entry means if I do an exchange with you, maybe buy a iPad from you, you keep a record in your notes. He paid me this much. I keep a record in my notes, but there's also a third record, a public record, of that transaction. So it helps the accounting to have this this resource. You can say, let's look it up. Yeah, I forget maybe my record's not good. Did I pay him? I can check. Look it up. There's a lot of different block explorers. This record is now public. So that's one way to look at what Bitcoin is. Solution to the Byzantine generals problem. Should I get into this? What do you think? I guess it is kind of important because it's the idea of making a consensus that everybody agrees is a problem. It was referred to as the Byzantine generals problem. The idea being you want to attack this city, and your armies are surrounding the city, and you know that if you can get all your armies to come in at once, like the city will fall. It'll be yours. But if you have a miscommunication, you say, we're going on Tuesday morning, and you're going by yourself, like you'll just be overwhelmed by the defenses. So you have to organize a plan. The trouble is that you don't have perfect communication. You have to send a messenger. Did the messenger even make it? You don't know. And maybe a messenger comes to you, maybe he's from the enemy. So it's a difficult problem, and a lot of people thought that this is also called the distributed consensus problem. And a lot of people thought that it was impossible. And indeed, certain, to do it perfectly is impossible. There's some guys like Greg Maxwell who wrote a paper about how this was impossible. And but actually Satoshi came out and said, well, we kind of have solved this problem. There is a way to do it, provided you have at least a certain level of trust in the communication. You can come to a consensus with what's called the Satoshi consensus. Where you basically all the generals, they run these their mining computers, and if someone gets lucky and finds a number that has a hash function with a very, very low output, says, look, I found this lucky number, and I say we're going to attack at 10 o'clock. and then everybody can check. They say, wow, that is a lucky number. Okay, we believe you. And if someone else gets even another lower number, they can build on that consensus and keep a record together. So this is partly what miners do, is to build a consensus. So if I do a transaction with him, I announce it, and then the miner has to select it and say, this is now part of the consensus. We are all going to agree here. I have a lucky number. That means I'm a miner. I can, which means I get a reward as well, at least in the standard Bitcoin and in many of the other coins. I'll get back to that a little more, sorry. Another way to look at it is a Swiss bank account in your pocket. This was something that Obama said. And maybe you've heard about Swiss bank accounts. They don't really exist in Switzerland anymore, I'm afraid. But you just have a key password, and you put as much money you want in there, and if you have the password, they'll give it to you. It's sort of like a perfect, no trouble bank account. And that's basically how Bitcoin functions. Anybody can have an account, as many as you want, and you can have 1 million Bitcoin addresses like that. Put as much money as you want in any of them, and then you have access to take it out. Doesn't take up much space. Very portable. This one's kind of fun too. I took this last one from Max Kaiser. Anybody watch the Kaiser report? Anybody? A couple almost hands. Not even these guys watch the Kaiser report. So it's political reform. Some people talk about political element because it's sort of changes the how much power the money issuers have. Disguised as a get-rich-quick scheme. So the idea here is that people aren't going to want to escape the prison, themselves, because it's very comfortable here. But we do like get-rich-quick schemes. So if you can get people going with this will get you rich, then they'll maybe give themselves some freedom as well. It's so funny. I like his turns of phrases. He puts things together in a nice way. Let's go to the next slide. How are we doing on time here? Let's go to the next slide. One more. Fee market. Yes, very cheap transactions today. Let's keep going. Okay, this address more about the money supply curve. So how much new money comes out, and how. This is from a book that Quincy found for me, Margaret Kennedy in '95, and different ways that you can have a money supply changing with time. You could have it just like growing exponentially. This is sort of what we're used to with dollars in the last century, and let's talk about economic growth as having an annual percentage rate. That means it's an exponential growth. But Bitcoin's more on this model, which I'm going to call geometric curve. So it grows, it slows down quickly. It grows at first, and then there's not that many more new ones coming out. A lot of, sometimes you have a linear growth model. This means a constant number comes out every year. Delta function, there's some physics terminology for you. This one, so this is when you have a big amount at the beginning, like an airdrop. Sometimes people call this pre-mine in the cryptocurrency community. But sometimes you want to just create them all at the beginning. If you're making something like a ticket for a concert, this is how you would do it. Okay, we're going to create 100 tickets. Now I have all 100 of them. Now I'll sell them. Makes sense. Maybe that's not the best way to handle something like currency, though. But some groups have done this. Ripple is like that. Next, there's a number of currencies that do this initial creation and then don't issue anymore. This one's a logarithmic curve. We can talk about that. And I had a brief diversion. What's the next slide? Okay, yeah. I had a little brief diversion. I'll give you here. Let's see if that'll work. Any pen over here? I'll leave that there. Yeah. And anybody familiar with geometric series? I got your attention here. I'm going to give you a little math lesson. So let's consider, so we can write this. Consider this function 1 over 1 minus x. You'll see where this is going soon. Bring it back to Bitcoin. So I'm going to do a long division here. This is kind of similar. Maybe you've seen this before. 1 divided by 3 gives you this repeating fraction. Can anybody see this? I need to write this bigger. Anybody? You can see it? So if you put this in a long division like this. So I wrote this 1 here is 1 plus 0x plus 0x squared. And 1 minus x here. We do a little long division. So it goes in here 1 time. 1 times 1 minus x is 1 minus x. So we subtract here, and we get 0 plus x, right? Because 0 minus minus x is plus x. So plus 0x squared, dot, dot, dot. So now 1 minus x goes into this thing x times, so plus x. So we keep going. X times 1 minus x is going to be x minus x squared, right? We can subtract here 0 plus x squared. So you can see this will give us a plus x squared here. And this is going to keep going. Plus x cubed, dot, dot, dot. And this might be a little surprise because you have this nice simple expression here, 1 over 1 minus x. And here we have this infinite series of growing powers of x. Right over here. So does this make any sense? Let's see. Let's plug a number in. Suppose we put in like 2, x equals 2. So over here on the left we have 1 over minus 2, which is minus 1. 1 over minus 1 is minus 1. Okay. What if we put 2 in here? Well, 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 8 doesn't work, does it? Doesn't make sense in that case. Let's take another case. Let's take x equals 1/2. So here on this 1 over 1 minus x, what's that give us? 1 over 1 minus 1/2, it's 2, right? So 2 equals 1 plus 1/2 plus 1/2 squared, quarter, plus 1/2 cubed. And now we're actually getting somewhere because maybe you've seen this before. This comes out of like Zeno's paradox. 1 plus 1/2 plus 1/4 plus 1/8. You never, yeah, it never quite get to 2. We have a 1 in the beginning. But you get closer and closer. And so you can see that it does work here. Yes, if x is anything under 1, this will converge. This series on the right-hand side will reach, this will be correct equality, and it will converge. And this is how the reward is adjusted for Bitcoin. they call it a halving time. After you spend about 4 years at one term, releasing a certain amount per block, a certain amount of new coin per day, and then it gets cut in half. And then, so at first it was 50 coins for 4 years. Every 10 minutes were given out to the miners for their contribution to creating a consensus and verifying the transactions. And then it was cut in half. It was 25 for 4 years. And now we're in the third segment here, 12 and a half. And this is, it's pretty rapid convergence. These series rapidly converge. This, the reward, how much was, I won't phrase that as a question. The 50 Bitcoins was the original reward, and that means 5 billion Satoshis. Pretty big number. And to get from 5 billion down to 1 Satoshi, the award goes all the way down to 1. It's a lot smaller. And it only changes once every 4 years. But it's going to get there by about 2120, I believe. So it really drops rapidly. And once the reward gets down to 1 Satoshi, you can't cut it in half anymore. So there just won't be any more. But in fact, this is a bit of a problem. You even here at 1/16th, it's already quite small compared to how much these guys were getting back in the day. And you might ask, why are miners going to keep mining if the reward is so small? And Satoshi said, well, there's going to be fees on the network, and we have seen fees. People have paid quite high fees sometimes. So, but there's still a bit of a question in my mind, and a lot of people trying to figure out if this is the best way to go about things.
But doesn't that bring in scarcity and therefore the cost of each Bitcoin is going to go up?
Yeah, it does. You're right. In theory, it could, but of course, that also assumes people still want them. There's also how much demand is there really to begin with.
So, I have a probably provocative question.
Oh, nice.
But I mean, all of this and blockchain and everything else makes sense as an open ledger, and I think that's a brilliant concept. But what you're describing to me is not a currency, but an artificial commodity.
Mm-hmm. That's a reasonable way to describe it.
I mean, you can't walk in here and buy a book with it.
Well,
Actually, you can. Well, yeah, could.
But can you?
well, maybe not. That's up to him. He's the proprietor.
Exactly.
It's up to me, and I certainly could.
But can you walk into here with a stock certificate and buy a book?
Well, no, but stock certifications don't play
But
with
you
currency.
But you
So
could walk
it's
Well,
in
you
defined
could, actually,
as
right?
what you
If you
define
accept
currency.
If you digitized it and you had an application that converted it through a decentralized exchange to pay for the book in whatever currency he chose to accept. We all have a little smart guy in our pockets.
Right, but what makes it better and easier to use than a dollar bill or a credit card that's paid to fiat currency?
Just what I described.
It's
That's a good
consensus
question.
of what currency is now. What we agree on as a currency.
That's right. I mean, it's backed by the full faith of the government.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
That the government's going to send our troops over to some
That's exactly
country
what it
to
means,
defend it?
Yeah.
So,
It used to be that it was backed by gold, and now that
It used to be, but no more. We assign it value.
We in debt value.
There's every object has a use value and an exchange value. So you in theory you could, if you're willing to make a deal, and you're the proprietor, there's not, you can use anything as a means of exchange.
Change snow tires for books.
Yeah.
I mean, right?
Exactly.
That's right.
so
There's something else that fits into your question called Gresham's Law. I don't know if you come across this.
usable value.
Yeah,
Like,
especially up here, yeah.
You guys seen Gresham's Law?
yeah, that counts law.
Is Gresham's Law is actually predates Gresham by quite a bit. It goes back to ancient Greece again, and they found that there's a certain time in Athens, for example, when they introduced a new coin, really high quality metal, better than the previously circulating gold, which was sort of diluted and sometimes underweight. And what happened was that all these new coins that they introduced to replace the old ones disappeared, and no one used them. And the thing is that people, and Gresham's law is that bad money drives out good. So that's one way it's put. It's a little hard to put it succinctly, but basically, if you have some of these good coins in your pocket and you also have some of the old shoddy ones, but dad over is willing to take the old shoddy ones for the books, you're going to give him the old shoddy ones.
Yeah.
And so people are going to use the currency that is the whatever's like the least important to you. Like that's what you'll choose to use.
Case in point, I won't buy the book with Bitcoin.
Yeah, and you see a lot of people are not using. You look at the fees. The very few transactions occurring on the network. I mean, a lot of people are.
What do you mean by the fees? You said that twice.
Yeah, sorry. Could go back there, but there's been a bit of contention. But if you make their fees free, so to make a transaction on the network, then you're vulnerable to spam attacks. So I could like just send out, 1 trillion satoshis and just like flood the network with these tiny little transactions. So the network has to get your transaction to be accepted and put in this public database, it has to have some fee on it. And the fees have, at one point there was a lot, about 6 months ago, maybe more recent, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, there was a lot of people trying to get transactions in, and there's, if you really want to get your transaction in, you can put more fee in, and the miner will be like, oh, we'll take yours first. And this was actually, it went up quite high. It was like $20 to get a transaction for a very short period of time. And everybody backed way off at that point. Like, no, I'm not going to pay $20 to do a transaction, as you might imagine. But some people still did. If it's $1 million transaction, then that's nothing compared to typical fees. But
So a fee is a cost for getting your transaction hashed.
Exactly, get it into the network. And there's a number of other coins that have come up with Bitcoin Cash, and a lot of traffic has moved to some networks with lower fees. So I talked about Gresham's law. I have one more infinite series for you here. We talked about the geometric series. We have this one now. Let's call it S. Does anybody know what this adds up to? Remember, we had this one.
The golden rule, 1.51 something. I'm guessing.
This one actually is kind of surprising to me. Looks like it's another series. Each term's getting smaller, right? So like this thing, each term's getting smaller. But the thing is, they're not getting smaller at a constant ratio. These are getting smaller at a constant ratio. These are getting smaller at a constant ratio, 1/2 every time. These are getting smaller, but the ratio is getting smaller as well. So the amount that's getting smaller also gets smaller. So it actually doesn't converge. This thing goes to infinity. Believe it or not, it's kind of hard to imagine, but if you put 10 to the 40th terms together, you get about 100. And this is what I put in when I was working on Woodcoin. We use this kind of a distribution, so every block is a little bit less according to this curve. So this is much longer lasting because you won't reach 1 Satoshi until 200 million years have gone by. It's very slow. Has some other attractive properties. But let's see what else I have for pretty pictures while you're still here. if you're still paying attention. Yeah, here's the logarithmic curve. Let's keep going. Hash rate on the Bitcoin network. Let's keep going. We can't read this. Any more? Oh, I can have some quotes about privately issued currencies here. Maybe you've heard these. Henry Ford said, "It's well enough that people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system. For if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." This was like 1920s, I think. So is that?
That raises the question for me. I know you talked in the beginning about the government and cryptocurrency, and that they really can't lock it down. It's kind of open source, so it's happening. What about financial institutions and banks that that run our current currency?
Yes.
How do they? What's their position?
Yeah, that's a great question. Everybody wants to know. One thing that a lot of people early on talked about how this would be like could be a financial reset. We're getting the money into some new hands, but you got to keep in mind that who's getting the bitcoins? It's the wealthy people, and so it's if you're you own a bank, you can get your hands on some bitcoins, right? And so it's not. This isn't like necessarily a conflict. I didn't quite address your question there, but it's not that you would be against this system necessarily if you're in
Would it undermine your traditional financial system?
In some sense, I think, yeah. If you, a lot of the economies are based on this new issuance of currency. So you have, new money goes to the U.S. every year. They call the deficit, and if you have some good friends in high places, you can get a loan at very low rates, what they call interest rate apartheid. And some people have access to cheap money, and other people don't. It's not just about. A lot of people talk about income inequality. It's not just about who has money and who doesn't. It's about who has access to creating new money or getting cheap loans. And so that's it certainly can change things, but things are constantly in flux already. And I don't. There's still room for financial institutions. I mean, a lot of people say, don't need banks anymore, but suddenly we have all these companies, Binance and Zappo and Coinbase. So we just have new banks. It's kind of The Onion said it well. They had a headline that was like, Bitcoin proves it's becoming like real money as it's all owned by a very small fraction of people. So
Centralized.
yeah. But we're seeing how this evolves. So you guys might know better than I do. Just because I've been following it doesn't mean I know the current what's going to happen. Sometimes knowing what happened in the past can get in the way.
So what was Henry Ford's beef with the banking? Was it just he didn't like the way the government controlled the...
I think he liked the banking system.
Maybe. He just that people can create currency from nothing. Something you might also, a good resource here is Marco Polo. There's a very short chapter in his travels that he introduced this idea of paper money that he saw in the kingdom of a king called Khan. And a lot of people in Europe hadn't heard of this and read it. It's like, wow, it's kind of powerful system. And this king just controls this whole area. He's like, anybody brings gold or anything valuable, he's like, no, you give that to me. I'll issue you some of these paper notes. And he writes it very succinctly, and it's describes very well the way things work a lot today. Let's try. I got a few quotes here for you. It had been stated that the power to make a small piece of paper not worth 1 cent by inscribing a few names to be worth $1,000 was a power too high to be entrusted to the hands of mortal man. And I think about this a lot, similar to the founding fathers of this nation, who had the foresight to say, maybe we should try to limit the power of government. It's kind of a, and say what you will about these guys in other venues, but there's some, you can give them some credit there. It's sort of a neat way to look at it. And in some ways, that's what Bitcoin does. It's like, let's limit the power of currency issuance. Yeah. So that, I like that part of it. Let's try another slide. By this means, government may secretly and unobserved confiscate the wealth of the people, and not one man in a million will detect the theft. Well, maybe Keynes might be underestimating us. Maybe we can do better than 1 man in a million. But it can be hard to detect, you know, especially when there's technological increases coming and things are like easier than ever. If somebody issues a ton of currency themselves, like, we don't see it in inflation. We see, it can be hard to even notice that, you know, $3 trillion disappears from the Pentagon, and yet beer's still a couple dollars. So it didn't really affect me. Be hard to notice. Let's try another one. Federal Reserve, U.S. Congressman. Let's move on to the next one. This is a very, very famous one. Give me control of the nation's money, and I care not who makes the laws. And so yeah, you can see how that works. If the judge is on your payroll, it's a little, things are looking in your favor. Let's try, and you know, yeah. Let's see. I'm gonna skip some of this stuff unless somebody has a question about any of this.
But isn't hacking people what to constantly protect their bitcoins from being hacked? So it's not that secure, is it?
Yeah. Well, this is a very good point. I mean, if I had put all my bitcoins in my phone and head off to Las Vegas, like, they're not very secure because I'm gonna go gamble them away, or if I'm you know, giving them all to some Ponzi scheme, or if I'm leaving them on my Windows computer that's also downloading torrents, then someone could perhaps steal them. So you have to come up with some security policy. The one nice thing about using these digital currencies is there's a lot of options. There's paper wallets, there's hardware wallets, there are custodial accounts. I'm not a huge fan of those. Let's keep going because I have a slide that addresses this before we go. Keep going. This is a famous cartoon. Maybe I'll pause briefly, let you read this one, because it refers to your question of security a little bit. You get this fantastic crypto system that can't be cracked. Let's build a multi-million-dollar cluster to crack it. No good. 4,090-bit, 6-bit RSA. This is those guys, Ravir, Shamir, and Edelman. Blast! Our evil plan is foiled. This is our crypto nerd's imagination. And of course, in real life, his laptop's encrypted. Drug him and hit him with this $5 wrench until he tells us the password. Something to keep in mind. All right, let's try the next one. Okay, so this addresses your concern. Maybe this would be a good way to stop too. In case anyone's taking notes, you at home taking notes might want to keep in mind you don't want to lose your money. Okay, so make a note of that. So I'm going to show you some ways that you can lose your money, and then maybe you won't do them. That'd be good. Although I probably will continue to lose money in these ways myself. So another one of some famous verbs being created. Get goxed. You don't want to get goxed. And being goxed is when you've been a victim to counterparty risk. Is anybody familiar with that term? A little bit. This is a term that I wasn't so familiar with till I came across Bitcoin, but it's something that I'd been exposed to in my whole life, but I just didn't know how to call it that. And the idea being that if someone else is holding your money for you, that's a counterparty, and there's a risk that they might go out of business or go under. And typically, it's not an issue. If the bank is a counterparty risk, you're not expecting them to go under. It's probably very safe. But a lot of institutions have gone under, in particular Mt. Gox. And so you want to be a little careful with taking on counterparty risk. Online wallets, there's a big one back in the day called mybitcoin.com, and people use this site to hold their Bitcoins. And these guys, some amazing sum, it was like hundreds of thousands of Bitcoins were lost when the website went down, and your coins are gone. Sorry. They weren't yours, really. We had them. Sometimes this is called an exit scam. Some service, they'll say, "Oh, we got hacked," and then they.
Doesn't the blockchain
Yeah.
carry all those
Well,
transactions?
it does, yeah, and you can see the money move. But the thing is that you didn't have the keys. You gave someone else has the keys, so
So you don't have any.
there's no recourse. I mean, you could possibly find a legal recourse to sue these guys if you can find them.
Right.
But other than that,
Azerbaijan.
yeah. Another way you can quickly lose money is to get jiao tonged. And, this is to be out on leverage more than you should be. So you're maybe you have some ideas about the market. A lot of people get into this coins, and they have to use an exchange. Then they say, well, maybe I should play on this exchange. And look, I made some money. Maybe I'm really good at this. And then they play more, and then they gamble more, and then suddenly it goes the wrong way, and they lose everything. And there's some very vicious players in this market. They'll really lure you in and offer you 100 times leverage, and if you're not good at saying no, then you have to know when to fold. BitConnect, yeah.
So that was what John Oliver talked about when he warned about people getting into.
Yeah. I think he did mention that. In fact, he did a little BitConnect piece, didn't he? A lot of these are called Ponzi schemes. Charles Ponzi. Something else I didn't know much about until I got into Bitcoin. People really love these Ponzi schemes. This huge one in Russia, the MMM scheme. The guy just passed away, I think. He just ran him his whole life. And there was a big one, this guy called Pirate at 40 back in the early days of Bitcoin. He's like, I'm going to give you 1% a day, or was it 1% a week? 1% a day seems a little high. 1% a day maybe. And people were just gave him their money. Yeah, I would love to have 1% a day. I would love it too. What about you guys? And the way it works is as the new money comes in, he pays out that 1% to his investors, and it just grew and grew and grew, and until finally it didn't, and then he couldn't pay anybody. And I was also some unheard of. So his name was Trevor Shavers or something. He actually he ran into trouble with the SEC, and some might even be in jail. You can also make some user error. People lose passwords. People put their Bitcoins on a old hard drive and then throw it away. A lot of coins are lost. Yeah.
So what exactly is a coin then? Is it a piece of code?
Yeah, well, it's information, so it's a number. It's a 256-bit number. I should have put some examples here, but looks random. You could be any private key can be any 256-bit number, and doesn't say you can't look at it and see how much is there. You have to query it to a database and look at the blockchain and see how much that address holds.
So how much Bitcoin is out of circulation, as it were?
Nobody knows, because it looks the same on the blockchain. It just hasn't moved.
Just doesn't have a transaction.
Yeah. It's just that you can see a lot that hasn't moved in 3 years. A lot that hasn't moved. There's a lot that hasn't moved since it was mined. In fact, all the coins that apparently were mined by Satoshi appear to be gone. They're just not, hasn't moved at all. It's kind of interesting. It might be worth mentioning that because he's really a exemplary character. The way he came in and
He, she, or they.
what's that?
He, she, or they.
He, she, or they came in and solved this problem and presented it, but without, without saying like I'm looking for credit. Didn't want fame. Didn't want money. It was just like, let me solve this problem for you. I mean, you don't really see that much. That people, that mentality.
Can they be theoretically remined?
No.
So they're lost and down forever?
Yeah.
It's deflationary.
That's the deflationary part. Yeah. Do I have anything more up here? Lou, you can try next slide. We could skip this. Keep going. Okay. These things are all true to some extent, but it's a good way to, they're often misquoted. People say some sort of wrong things about these, so I thought I'd put them up here. Like we just saw how Bitcoin was deflationary because people lose some. But in fact, it's also inflationary because there's new ones coming out all the time. So you have to be a little careful. It has some, it will become, certainly into the price, the part of these words that people always confuse what you're talking about. You're talking about the price? Yeah, the price has been very deflationary. The supply, however, has continued to rise. You can go back. A lot of people say, I do have a Bitcoin account. In a way that makes sense if you're thinking about it as like that Swiss bank in your pocket. But I think that most people, it doesn't sound like the right, it hasn't become the way that people talk about Bitcoin. Let's put it that way. You wouldn't say like my dollar account, right? It doesn't really, the account is typically a word you use with an institution. Bank account, bar tab, library account, but you don't have like a gold account. It's not. So people talk about a Bitcoin address instead. Better. The terminology has changed a little bit, and it's hard to know where it's going to go. But some things have been established, so we can say. A lot of people compare Bitcoin with Visa, which is again similar to comparing the dollar with Visa. So it's like, is Visa going to take over the dollar, or can the dollar compete with Visa? I don't know. It's not necessarily worth making this comparison, is my point. If you add some caveats, talk about network, you could perhaps make this worthy, but Visa is not a currency. So people always say unregulated. Oh, it's unregulated, but in fact, like if you look at the money supply, is actually very closely regulated. I mean, compare it to like the dollar. The dollar is unregulated currency. Bitcoin's like publicly, auditable.
Yeah, but I mean, when people say it's regulated, they think it's regulated by the government, and this is not regulated by the government.
That's true, yes. And also they're talking about like guys making exchanges and who are less regulated. People selling coins are less regulated than people selling stocks. So there is an element of the whole
There's still
ecosystem.
enforcement, but there's still regulation that already exists in laws that pertain
That's
to
true.
all
Anti-fraud and whatnot. There's some basis for this, but I'm just trying to present the other ways. Encrypted money goes to the thing of why we call it crypto. Is it's always a bit of a misnomer in my mind because these are public, open systems, and we use the Greek word for hidden, crypto. And so it's actually not encrypted money. It's the blockchain is all plain text. You can read it. It's all you can encrypt it later yourself if you want. A lot of people are talking about miners solving math problems. That's sort of, maybe I'm the only one who's annoyed by that. It's not really a math problem. It's more like picking a lucky number. There's not really math that's involved with doing a hash function. It's like it's a sort of randomized mixing of the digits. So that's
It's just brute force.
it's brute force. Yeah, there's no integrals. There's no nothing that you might algebra. There's not even really any addition. So it's just a brute force repetition of a mixing up of digits. A lot of people say it can't be confiscated, which is a dangerous thing to say. You can make it hard. You know, it can be harder to find, especially if you use many of these techniques. You can put it in it's a number, so you can hide it in an image. You can hold it in your mind. You know, there's a lot of things you can do, but don't say can't be confiscated, because look what happened to what was his name, the Silk Road guy, the Silk Road pirate guy.
Oh,
right.
is it Assange? No.
No.
That's the leaked guy.
Anyway, the police
Dread
came
Pirate
in.
Roberts.
Dread Pirate Roberts, yeah. They came in and took his laptop and auctioned off his big pile of bitcoins in a public auction. Okay, maybe that's all I have. Let's see what we got here. I could talk about some of my sponsors, but this is all from a different talk, so maybe we've covered enough here. Let's see what else.
Anonymous? One of your sponsors?
Yeah, this is no, he's not my sponsor. This is I put that up there to show solidarity with the people who've written code that I've used. So there's a lot of anonymous contributions to these projects. There's a university I work at in China. A Woodcoin logo. Here's Ryan's project. I got a few other. This guy's working on a stable coin in Colombia. I've worked with them a little bit. Let's see what else we got. A group in China that invited me to give some talks. ADD token. Let's keep going. Age of Chains. I like these guys in the German game that's built on a blockchain. They have like these cards. But they're scarce. It's kind of like Magic the Gathering, but the scarcity is managed by, go ahead. He made these nice pictures for his cards. So, and he blends in some different currencies in his game. Let's see what else we got. Keep going. We'll keep going. All right. Let's stop there. I'm going to ask some questions.
All right. What's Woodcoin? We're gonna get some Woodcoin.
It's this.
Is that an Android Woodcoin wallet?
There's an Android Woodcoin wallet. Yeah, it's not used much. It's pretty experimental, but there's a few people who trade it, and so you can find out in 2 exchanges right now, I think. But there's really very low volume. Still, is an interesting idea for the supply curve. Maybe you can find another. Yeah. Try another one.
You can turn the lights on.
Yeah,
turn the lights on,
lights
yeah.
on, lights on. Turn the lights on.
Yeah, go for it. We could turn the screen off. Yeah, Woodcoin's been a fun project for me. Learn more about how this stuff worked. Worked on it in 2014. Not a lot recently, but a little bit. And this is the main difference, where you have this, you produce the rewards along with this series, so that the curve is logarithmic. And the money supply just grows like this. We use that word log. Did I address your question at all about the miners, or?
Yeah, no, because a friend of mine was mining it and it didn't exactly know what it meant, but you explained it now.
How does your coin get mined, or how do you generate new blocks?
So the it uses this hash function called skein, S-K-E-I-N. It's it was one of the candidates for the SHA-3 function, but it was written by Bruce Schneider, whose name came up earlier. It's based on this two-fish encryption method, and the only reason that it was chosen was because it's different from SHA-256. So it might be good to have a different function, because you can be attacked, especially if you're a small coin. You have these big mining farms where they have a ton of power during SHA-256. If they put that suddenly on your coin, it can the difficulty go way up, and it can cause some network disruption.
Yep.
So just pick this other one that doesn't get that much use.
So it's mine now?
It's mine. It's still, yep. There's 8 million coins outstanding. There'll never be more than 28 million. So it's slower. Yeah, every block is smaller, but it doesn't go down as fast as this halving. The halving is very quick to reduce that reward.
How does the difficulty work?
Difficulty is the identical, same adjust, although the it's 2-hour period instead of a week. It's a 2-hour. But it's just the mechanics are basically the same as Bitcoin or Litecoin. In fact, the Litecoin base was used to generate it. Only other difference is that it uses a different elliptic curve for the public and private keys. So there's a few different systems to have public and private keys. Ralph Merkle came up with one of the first ones, whose name also appears in some of the cryptography in Bitcoin. His system was proven to be not so secure. Then these RSA guys came up with a prime number system. And today a lot of people use a system based on what's called elliptic curves, which is a little too complex to get into details, but it's basically just, instead of using a straight line, you use a curve, which makes it a little harder to follow exactly where you are. It just makes it sort of obfuscates the nature of this. And again, it's modular arithmetic. So like a clock, 11 plus 2 is 1 on a clock, right? So you have that. If you do that a lot of times, it becomes gives you a sort of makes it more difficult to figure out what the original number was. I'll explain that a little bit.
Is it the entropy that they're generating?
The entropy is certainly important, but the key, that'll be with how big your key size is. So Woodcoin uses a more commonly used curve than this. I think the Bitcoin uses called SECP 256K1. K is for this guy called Koblitz. He was a pioneer in this field of elliptic curve cryptography. And if you look at the curves, they're basically they're generated by something times x cubed plus something times x squared, and plus some constant, B and C. And these numbers are giant numbers, 256 bits. And then but with Koblitz number, this particular curve that was chosen for Bitcoin, and then a lot of people asked Satoshi, why did you choose this coin? And he said, it was lying around. an odd, perhaps an odd choice, but nonetheless it was chosen, and a lot of people use it now for almost every coin. There's some other ones for some of these other systems like Monero, and there's a different one. But this is the main one, and this number is like 7. It's a Koblitz curve, which is a sort of an odd choice. Well, it is an odd number, yes, but it doesn't look like it has as much entropy. The other one that Woodcoin uses is called R1, and the choice for these constants appears more random. They come out of a seed, and you hash it, and you pick this for the first one, this for the second one, this for the third one. And some people advocate that this is better. However, I've never heard of any way that these are close to being broken at all. So it probably doesn't.
What's your key space size? Is it
same? Yep.
Quintessential.
It's just a little annoying for building wallets and things because you have to you put these new constants in. It might not have been a great choice, but
Right.
it seemed like why not use a different curve?
Does that limit your ability to be if 39 compatible?
No.
Oh,
Wait,
okay.
is that the one with the words?
Yeah.
The seed words?
12. Yeah, 12 words.
Yeah. No, it's you can still use the same seed words.
Okay.
There are some things that are some techniques that people are talking about using with these different elaborate signature schemes. There's always new improvements suggested for these protocols. Ryan mentioned this Bitcoin improvement. What is it? Protocol proposition proposal. Okay.
Yeah.
Bitcoin improvement proposal. So there's different people say, yeah, we should put this in there, and everybody says, yeah, you're crazy, get out of here. And sometimes it'll make it through, and enough people will support it, and they'll say, we'll add this feature to our wallet. And, that's any other questions?
I was curious about your feelings about using Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general for nation states, and whether it would be whether we want to help nation states anyway, or whether it would be or maybe the current state of it, or Venezuela's attempt. Do you know too much about it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of talk about it, and I think that a lot of people are thinking about how to do it, and want to stay somewhat current. On the other hand, you also have this thing with Gresham's law, where you want to use. People are still willing to take WeChat dollars, then you can still use them. But it's good to be thinking ahead. You want to be ready. So I think that they're talking about building FedCoin, and absolutely, I think all the nations are having these discussions, and they have been for some years now. And people should be too, because when sometimes things can change rapidly, and it's good to be ready for any kind of troubles. And, why not? They should issue something different. Give us a Fed coin. I'll help you build it if you're out there. Venezuela did an interesting thing. I don't know if you guys are aware. He mentioned that they built the coin on. It took me a long time to figure out what they did. They used this NEM platform, and it was going to be on Ethereum, and then they didn't issue their own root currency. They issued it as a token on an existing platform, and Petro. And apparently they raised a lot of money, but who knows? I've never really seen a blockchain explorer or what's for this. So I don't know. What's that?
For NEM or Petra?
For the Petra.
Oh, for the Petra.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. You don't know the Venezuela project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They probably have. It's probably one of the things where they have a key they can issue more if they want to, just like the USD tether. I mean, it's public, but also we can add as much as we want. That's kind of at least it's public. At least people know. I think that's a little bit better. Yeah. So I think that why not issue something like that for I think they should do that. Yeah, I'd be a supporter. Anybody else think so, or maybe it's crazy?
Some people say they've already moved over to the crypto, and we're kind of just in the shadow of this whole movement. We haven't woken up to what it's.
I think he might be onto something there. Yeah. They already have their Fed coin. It's just waiting for us to wake up.
I like to say it's not really crypto versus the government. It's governance versus government. And blockchain and protocol-based technologies are all open governance models. So if you already have governance built into the system, what do you need government as it necessarily exists, but more to it needs to integrate those tool sets, just modern tools for the same old system. Right?
Okay.
Government's a set of laws.
Yeah. Or
That's
even
what protocol is.
But government can make decisions like we have, a recession, let's pump up some more money and get money out into the system and so they can change things. If you're governed by mathematical governance only, you can't make those kind of policy decisions.
So do we have a clear historic precedent that says that's a good thing and that the results that they've achieved should be duplicated?
Depends on whether you think spending for like Great Depression and the New Deal and all that kind of stuff, it really depends on your point of view.
Well, sure, which fiat currency is more than 100 years old?
Sorry?
Which fiat currency is more than 100 years old?
Which
Yeah, maybe the dollar. You could
Controlled or
say-
managed currency.
Could say that it's.
What you just described is a fiat currency, one where somebody has issuance control and can make monetary policy decisions. U.S. dollar maybe, but it's been detached from gold, so the currency as it sits today is not 100 years old. It's a different currency than it was when it was detached from gold. And gold, by the way, is detached from our currency after it was confiscated by our government. It was illegal to own gold in this country.
I've heard though that they didn't actually confiscate that much. I don't know if anybody probably knows more than me, but
They made it illegal to own.
yeah.
And large.
But how much was
holders
really
were-
taken? So I don't know.
It's more like it was sitting in banks, and it was.
I don't think they took it, right? They had to hand it in to the bank.
There wasn't like a door-to-door where you're coming for your gold thing.
No, it was like you couldn't hold it in private holdings. You had to establish.
It's like a tax.
But age
You
of
probably became a bank if you had a lot of gold.
the
so
age of fiat, how does that how does that relate to
Well,
whether or not it's
because-
a useful tool for alleviating poverty or stimulating an economy or something along that lines?
Right, because the concept of monetary control and control over issuance isn't a new concept. It's been around for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, right? The Chinese Empire issued tokens on the Silk Road. And my point was that the statement of we need these controls in order to do these things makes an assumption that those controls breed success, that the result of those controls are successful experiments in economic policy. But the reality is, we don't have a fiat currency that's still around. So if we had such a successful experience of managing monetary controls, why don't we still have a monetary system that's serving us for 1,000 years?
There's kind of a common debate between the Keynesian economists and the
Behavioral theory
Okay.
economists, or modern
who's the other guys?
modern monetary modern monetary policy.
Friedman, yeah.
Okay.
About whether it's good, whether the government should have this power to inject
I
and
mean, I
give some money out.
don't know the answer. I'm not
Oh, it's a
going to
good question,
complain that
yeah.
But the other thing is that I was thinking, because people are on their own, non-government agencies are creating, and I heard that there's like all sorts of cryptocurrencies now, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's pretty much And as you were talking, I was thinking about how in the early days of the Republic, every bank issued its own currency.
Yes.
And it became less and less valuable the further away you got from the issuing bank, and that's why we standardized on a currency. And might
Yeah.
not the same thing be happening
Yeah.
here?
Yeah, no, I think that it could be entering a time of more difficult, maybe having more to keep track of. You know, if we have more currencies, you think, well, that's more complicated, right? Maybe it's easier just to have one.
I think there's about 1,600 right now, somewhere around there.
So how do you know what a book is worth? I mean, he might think
Yeah,
that
it's
a
the
book
market
is worth.
value.
You have to
But
figure
what
out
if he,
what
what if,
markets
what
are
if he
fair.
says, no, I don't think that this cryptocurrency is really worth what they say it is, so I'm going, you know
Well,
what I mean?
somebody's trading it, and that's what the value is for that trade right this minute. So if you're going to exchange it as a good or service, then that would be a kind of the strike price of what the currency is. Just like kind of a commodity would be.
And there's not a great system in place. I mean, we have one of the things I've noticed is that I was coming up with this sort of more precise money is that we don't really have good systems for determining prices. Like traditional price discovery is done in these order book markets, but like you said or River said,
Well,
do you
it's-
trust that? Maybe that was like just me and Ryan getting together. Oh yeah, I'm giving you 1,000 for this, Ryan. You know, is that really worth 1,000? Maybe he shouldn't trust us. and that kind of thing happens a lot. And you have people manipulating markets.
Because if you had 1,600 currencies, how can
Yeah, they have to build a reputation. Now we have 10 years of Bitcoin. That's a start. Some reputation. People, some people are valuing this. I've used them all, many countries around the world. So there is some base. Of course, not all of these have
We've got
that.
different miles for every airline. We've got different gold coins in every video game. We've got different reward points at every hotel network. That's no different than cryptocurrencies, except that those are not on transparent public ledgers that you can confirm that they're not playing funny games with how they manipulate those numbers and how you actually perceive the value of what you're purchasing.
It's awfully complicated to buy a slice of meat.
But once you have a deal with that place and what they want, you have that currency in hand. It's very easy. You swipe your phone, press send.
How much
Very
good
easy to
trades
use.
are actually, is Bitcoin actually really in use in some kind of...
Yeah. There's several thousand transactions in each block, 10-minute block. So
You're buying Chinese food with it.
Are you?
The Chinese restaurant exchanged it from.
not in China though.
Yeah, probably
But
not.
so that's your Gershwin coin if you're buying Chinese food instead of...
Well, I was holding Bitcoin, which was kind of weird because I bought $100 worth of Bitcoin and never used the $100 because the value kept on going up. I would spend it, but it maintained like $100 in my wallet. So I spent like $100 of it and still had $100 in Bitcoin in my wallet.
A lot
But
of people have had this experience.
so it's like a money tree in a sense, And then I would go buy $40 worth of Chinese food because an online app that allowed me to take the Bitcoin, buy food, and that was an intermediate service that did that. So there's like the little cottage industries popping up, that are trying to service this crypto market.
There's like 20 plus merchants in Keene, New Hampshire that accept
Keene, New Hampshire's a good
cryptocurrencies.
place,
A lot of them
huh?
are using AnyPay, which is a New Hampshire company, or
okay.
coin payments.
Nice.
And right now, one of the networks, Dash, is paying $5 worth of Dash on every merchant transaction to both sides of the transaction. So spender and merchant get $5 worth of Dash for a $2 purchase or a $20 purchase. Until whatever that contract is set up or however that
It could be big.
operates.
I heard some story. That's how Alipay got started. There's some deals with offering people like $20 if you can get a merchant to accept
Yep.
our currency.
So Chinese food, you want a hot dog, you want a beverage
So-
in the store, you want a site for advertising in the
So you get
newspaper,
money just for
or
using that? For using it?
yeah,
Like a rewards.
yeah, they have a reward program set up for however long the
Is it
program
a
lasts.
blockchain reward program? So
Yeah,
whatever.
Dash is a blockchain platform. It's a token, digital cash, Dash. And there's a lot of cryptocurrency enthusiasts around Keene, New Hampshire, and they've gotten a lot of merchants on board accepting currency. I just literally talked to a shop owner that said, yeah, I was really surprised about this program. I had an extra $1,000 just from the rewards from those transactions. So I, roughly speaking, in a month or so, 1,000 transactions divided by $5 worth of Dash, that's, or $1,000 worth, that's people coming in the store buying things, when people agree to do business, transactions happen.
I think a lot of the transactions are big ones being settled. Some things, well, it makes sense. I enjoy using it for buying a beer. When in New Hampshire, I know one bar I used to go to in Manchester. I think mostly little transactions I don't. I use what the proprietor is easiest for them to take. If the price is, if I happen to have some dollars in my pocket, I'll use them. And I'm not quite as much of a crypto nerd, or sadly, I think maybe I should go back to being like, I'm not going to touch that stuff anymore.
well, the real methodology is you've got to buy to replace it every time you spend it if you really want it to be supporting the ecosystem. But spend it everywhere. Replace it as soon as you
a lot of the transactions are big deals, like people who are maybe bringing in inventory, especially like an overseas deal, something that you might have a lot of friction to use dollars. Bitcoin, you can use it right away. So it's,
I read the New Yorker did a story about how a lot of folks have gone down to Puerto Rico and are trying to rebuild the economy, all based on cryptocurrency.
Yeah, there's a huge. I actually met Giancarlo is the founder of the Puerto Rico Government Blockchain Association chapter, and they have one of the largest chapters in that organization in Puerto Rico, and they've really embraced it by, in part, just through their tax. They've got 0% and 4% on Fed and capital gains, one or the other, and so very low taxes. And they have been very open from the government standpoint in terms of looking at the technology and how do they incorporate it and how do they create opportunity for the economy there. And also looking at sharing peer-to-peer energy trade with the solar installations that they're doing, creating ways to make sure that system stays open and works the best it can.
Reminds me of two questions I always expect to hear. One is why are we using so much energy with this? Mining's taking way too much energy. And it is a little scary, it's kind of intense. But yeah, it's so again, it's phrased often and incorrectly with the English, whereas people say Bitcoin uses too much energy. This is it's actually miners who are doing the energy. You might think, well, this is minor points, like sort of, do guns people or do guns kill people or do people kill people? But really, it's like saying like we should, gasoline is terrible. It's makes us burn so much. Gasoline is just gasoline. It doesn't mean you have to burn so much. And again, Bitcoin runs fine on any amount of energy. So the issue is that people are funneling a lot of energy into it. And so to understand why it's not just it's very complex. The system it has to do with our history of energy use. And, it's built to run on excess energy. So if you have a power plant, oftentimes they have spare capacity. If it's maybe you're producing a little extra energy. Bitcoin mining is perfect for these people because they have extra energy there. So that's where most of the energy is coming from, people making deals with power plants and using that power. The other thing that always people talk about is, isn't it always used by criminals? And cash is used by criminals. They say 90% of all paper money is in the black market. And I was an economist.
99% of bills have cocaine in them.
Yeah, bills have cocaine in them. But it is worth pointing out that if you plan to do a kidnapping operation and you're not using Bitcoin, you're insane. Because
don't try this at home.
Yeah. They're typically people who do kidnappings are in fact insane. So they don't know what they're doing. But if you, it's just the fact that you can teleport money from here to there.
You can't do chargebacks with.
You can't do chargeback, and also you don't need to carry a suitcase full of cash. You can just sit at home and have your location remain unknown and receive money. It's a possibility with Bitcoin. So you can see how certain criminal operations would benefit from that.
Yeah, that Bitcoin was the ransomware.
Ransomware,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, which is sad. I mean, but we have to prevent ransomware. And,
But that's system design. Right? You don't have all your pictures on one little computer to get hacked.
back up your files, and then when the ransomware comes up, you can just wipe your system.
Or your, health records in the UK.
It gets worse. Yeah, there's a lot of vulnerabilities, sadly, in the built up, and that's another issue. I don't know. Maybe we should stop here. Any other questions?
I just wanted to stay on the criminal point. You got to say like let those who are without sin spend the first coin or something, because the vast majority of violent behavior in the world today is not much competition. So there seems to be an obvious point, maybe.
What do you mean competition with who? With what?
Well, it's if people accuse you, so criminals use Bitcoin. I mean, it's pretty obvious. Like you said, 9% of the cash is
criminals use dollars.
And it's mainstream information that the big banks and the bailout use drug money.
That's true.
So it's JP Morgan Chase head Diamond was the one that said, Bitcoin's a fraud and all this stuff in September, and then right as it was hitting the bottom, there was a UK subsidiary, JP Morgan and Chase, purchasing $73 million worth of Bitcoin within 72 hours of those statements from the head of the bank.
Playing the market.
Oh yeah.
No, they're moving it.
Yeah.
Moving the market.
Moving it. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's no end to the criminality of banks. So, doubt about that.
So we should get them on public ledgers. We can try to hold them accountable.
Yeah, I think so. It's
They're tax
it's a
man
great
on the ledger.
opportunity.
And we can track every one of our tax dollars and where it's going.
Public ledgers, yeah.
Thank you.
Nice. Thanks for coming, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, good.